A nasty habit it was, flirting with the female employees at Angel's Share. The cavalry captain frequented it so often regardless of the time of day that the women almost seemed to expect the superficial attention he'd give them, and even seemed to appreciate it, ignoring how empty his words felt if they listened just a little too closely. However, Kaeya chooses with eye contact. Words were useless, something Kaeya learned much too young. The unspoken rule amongst most of the women that know of this language is, if he watches you, you're the lucky one for the night. Once he picks, he'd stay until the end of her shift, downing beverage after beverage and mingling with lonely subordinates or bards that wandered in looking for an audience to spare some more. They found Kaeya always tipped very nicely. By the time the chosen hostess shift ended, she would bid farewell to Charles, or die Luke, should the gods want to toy with the poor knight that day, and send a sparing glance to Kaeya as she left the tavern. Kaeya would finish the remainder of the drink he had been nursing. No, he wouldn't rush it. You can't rush wine before stepping off his bar stool and calling it a night. His chosen lover would be waiting oh so patiently for him around the corner of Angel's Share, and Kaeya would give a wordless smile as he offered his arm for them to take. Relationships were a no-go for him, but flings, oh flings, he could do. Patton would always see but didn't dare to comment, seemingly finding more interest in the pebbles that sat beside his shoes. The captain had no doubt he'd caused some bad blood in the workplace, seeing how waitresses and bartenders would give dirty looks to one another as soon as he entered the bar, and some of them went as far as to spoil Kaeya in hopes to earn his favor, giving him drinks on the house when no one was looking. Word eventually got to Luke, and those poor girls felt the brunt punishment in the form of unemployment. Really, his brother had no mercy at all, did he? With many women fawning over him as a popular bachelor of Monde YN, was certainly a culture shock. Walking into Angel's Share after a particularly long shift, his gaze immediately fell upon the new bartender, who was refilling the wooden pint of a man that was much too drunk enough to care how high his tab was. He noted that she was small, shorter than him at least, and much too eye-catching to not be a vision wielder. But as the girl turned around to reach for something on the shelf, Kaeya scanned over her body and was very curious as to not see a vision anywhere on her. Where exactly did she come from? He didn't realize he was still standing in the doorway gawking at the girl until his eye shifted, noticing a rather irritated-looking Luke who stood next to the mystery girl with his arms crossed. Kaeya brushed off his brother's glare, as he normally does, and strode inside, taking his usual seat at the bar. Luke got to work right away on his brother's drink. There was only one other woman working tonight, and one of Kaeya's regulars. She was very put off by how the cavalry captain didn't even notice her. She glared at the back of his head. He felt it, but he didn't care. He was preoccupied. Kaeya rested his cheek in his gloved palm as he watched YN work. She looked disinterested, perhaps annoyed. His narcissistic side was a little offended that she hadn't even glanced in his direction yet, despite him sitting right in front of her, but he'd let it slide for now. Luke placed Kaeya's wine in front of him before going to help reach for the box she was trying to get, noticing how badly she was struggling. He easily plucked the small wooden crate off of the top shelf and handed it to her. He offhandedly muttered something to her. Kaeya couldn't read his lips from this angle, and he saw roll her eyes in response as she got back to filling the drinks of some nights. Alright, so there's an attitude problem. Not an issue, Peresi. He's been with women in the past that have been rather temperamental. He also has no room to criticize such matters. But this did raise further interest. A lady to show this kind of demeanor so willingly in front of someone as esteemed as Luke must not be from around here. She hasn't got a clue who he is, or who Kaeya is. That's why she hasn't looked at him. Kaeya spent so much time staring at and that his wine was beginning to feel warm in his hand. He took a sip, looking down at his glass. When he glanced back up, he and YN's eyes met. It was very brief. She was turning to go take the order of a customer on the other side of the bar, her eyes skimming the other patrons already sat at the bar stools before locking momentarily with Kaeya's as he sipped his wine. She continued on as nothing happened, but Kaeya felt a pang in his gut as he placed his glass down, his eyes still following her movements. Maybe he was losing his touch. 5 drinks in, and she still hasn't said a word to him. Kaeya's starting to get a little huffy, but it might just be the alcohol. He's rather heavyweight, but his emotions still start to shine through a little more with each drink he consumes. Luke and YN. take turns cleaning glasses in silence, but the tavern was bustling with noise. Kaeya would have loved to join in, but somehow his mood has been dampened with the arrival of this new bartender. Dialux noticed Kaeya watching throughout the night. How could he not? How can she not? Her first day of work, and he's already rather frustrated at her airheadness. Besides, it's not usual for his brother to be so quiet, especially when the tavern is this lively. Another round over here, missy, belted a man who sat at a table full of drunkards, many of them goggling at N as she waited on other customers. YN, we need more pints. And Colt. YN placed a clean glass down with the rag and turned to Diluc, gaining his attention. Diluc, they're in the back, right? She asked, and it's the first time Kaeya heard her voice. Yes, the shelf on the far left. Diluc instructed her simply. YN nodded, leaving to go into the storage room. Diluc stood quietly, picking up another glass to clean as his brother finished his 5th glass of wine. Who is she? Kaeya bit the bullet and asked the question. Diluc didn't look up at him, but he sighed. He was debating not telling him anything, but Kaeya would find out sooner or later. His brother was relentless like that. If Diluc didn't tell him, it would seem like he was hiding something. He didn't care about this girl, but to put her into the arms of Kaeya. He wouldn't wish that for any woman. YNLN. She's a new employee, and that's all you need to know. Kaeya chuckled. Trying to keep her from me, Master Diluc, said Man scoffed, almost turning away entirely. No. She's an adult, she can do what she chooses. Well, that's good to know at least. She looks rather small. Diluc didn't care to comment, but YN returned before Kaeya could say anything else. She didn't even seem to notice the stiff air between the two siblings, setting down the crate of extra wooden pints by Diluc's foot. Will this be enough? She asked him. Diluc looked down, counting them over rather quickly before nodding, seeming distracted. YN didn't think he wanted to be here. She could agree with him on that. Pardon me, Kaeya spoke up, and the two of them turned their heads in his direction. He held his empty glass up, signifying his need for a refill, and YN, moving on autopilot, grabbed the bottle of Death Afternoon and poured it into his wine glass. Kaeya stared at her face the entire time. Thank you, sweetheart. Simple. A slip of the tongue, perhaps, or so he made it seem. Alas, it didn't seem to have an effect, as YN didn't even spare him another glance, hurrying over to busy herself with cleaning the opposite side of the bar. Kaeya hid his disappointed frown as he raised his glass to take a long sip, choosing not to give Diluc the satisfaction of acknowledging his silent gratification. No matter. He'll find his way about her before the night is over. The night continued, and Kaeya all but felt forgotten. His spirits were more bitter than his drinks, and he was almost embarrassed. When was the last time he became so hung up on a woman he hadn't yet met? The night continued, and Kaeya all but felt forgotten. His spirits were more bitter than his drinks, and he was almost embarrassed. When was the last time he became so hung up on a woman he hadn't yet met? It was a weird day for him indeed. It was only natural for a lonely bachelor to have a wandering gaze, especially when he was tipsy, and especially when his chosen one wasn't giving him the time of day. Kaeya grinned as he listened to the young woman sitting beside him at the bar, just as lonely as him as she spilled details of a pitiful life story Kaeya seemed to have heard many times. He spared a few glances at YN throughout the night, but she continued to pay him no mind. Keeping herself occupied with her work, there was an instance, though, when Y/N was able to take a quick break for a bite to eat, and while she munched on an apple, she and Kaeya made eye contact once more. Perhaps she is one of those who likes to be ignored? Kaeya rested his cheek on his palm, turning to face the woman beside him fully as he chuckled at something she said. The lady was much too intoxicated and into her story to tell Kaeya was using her at the moment, but he wouldn't have cared either way. He reached over to grab his drink, taking the opportunity to glance once more at YN, but she wasn't even looking at him anymore either. Kaeya felt his brow twitch, and he didn't even have the motivation to keep his fake smile up as the woman continued talking. Kaeya was getting bored. He came out for drinks and fun, not to be bored. Just as he was about to call it an unsuccessful night, he caught a glimpse of YN hiding a second apple in her lowered palm as she turned to leave the tavern out of the back exit. Diluc didn't seem all too bothered about her dismissal, not even sparing her a glance as she left. Kaeya saw an opportunity at hand, and for the first time in years, quickly guzzled down his alcohol, taking little time to appreciate its dry aroma as he had done his previous glasses. Diluc made no comment as his brother stood, leaving his payment on the bar and strolling out without another word while Kaeya drank about 10 glasses of wine, give or take. His vision was clear and his steps were calculated, save for a little buzz in the back of his brain. Being in the Knights of Favonius tested not only your charisma but also your alcohol tolerance, and Kaeya, with more than 10 years under his belt, had mastered both. Or so he thought until YN came into the city. He circled around the tavern, peeking around the edge of the building to find her kneeling down, offering her apple to a stray dog. It sniffed the fruit, seemingly uninterested but still hungry all the same. The dog suddenly looked to the corner where Kaeya was watching, letting out a growl with its hackles raised. YN looked over too, noticeably on guard. Well, there's no point in hiding anymore since his cover was blown, so quickly Kaeya stepped out from behind the corner with his arms crossed, and the dog ran away before even taking a bite of the apple. YN frowned at the leftover fruit in her palm. You know, dogs like meat much more than any fruit, he said. YN didn't answer as she stood, dusting off her pants. Kaeya didn't like being ignored too much. Does Master Diluc know you're using your paid break to feed the strays? Kaeya commented. He didn't know why he didn't just say hello. It was much less confrontational than whatever it was he just spat at her, almost like she was a child that needed a guardian's permission to move about the city. Though tipsy, he'd be damned if he let down the facade of a knight so easily. YN turned and looked up at Kaeya, and his stomach did a flip. She was finally looking at him. She was glaring, though. He deserved it, honestly. He wasn't afraid to admit that to himself. Who are you? She hissed. So she doesn't know. That explains so much. Once she hears his title, she'll understand. Kaeya didn't mind her bitter tone, and he couldn't help the smile that found its place on his lips as he spoke. I'm sorry, dear. I don't believe we've had a proper introduction. Kaeya placed a hand on his chest, and YN already appeared skeptical, her eyes watching the movements of his hands before flickering back up to his eyes. She thought this man talked too much. Kaeya Alberich, cavalry captain of the Knights of Favonius. There was a thick silence that resumed afterward. Awkward it may be, but YN looked downright confused. Kaeya suddenly felt a little out of place more than usual. Cavalry captain. YN repeated, a little puzzling. Kaeya attempted to break the ice by chuckling. You seem a bit muddled, he said. I just have no idea what that is. Kaeya blinked and shifted his weight to his other leg, attempting to keep himself from sighing, his ego slightly crushed. He opened his mouth to reply, but YN spoke first plus. I've been out here for too long anyway. I told Diluc I'd only take a couple seconds. Kaeya was about to make a rather crude comment when bounded up the backway stairs of the tavern. She gave a less than enthusiastic wave to Kaeya before bidding him farewell. Bye, Captain, she said before shutting the door behind her. Kaeya held his own hand up in a wave as well, his chest thumping at the nickname. Why are things so much more appetizing when they are out of your reach? Thanks for watching my video. Make sure to like and subscribe to my channel so you won't miss anything I post.